So I thought that this session we would start off with some meditation, and then I would talk a little bit about compassion or equanimity, the ways to generate compassion within the Tibetan Buddhist tradition. I told you this morning that, in the break time I'm editing this book that I'm working together with a psychologist. So you're going to get my perspective on whatever section I happen to be editing. And I was just editing. He is talking about how our brains evolved in certain ways. Our ancestors had to make snap decisions in order to stay alive, and so they formed categories of friends, enemies, and strangers very quickly. And then saying that our brains kind of continue that habit now. We have an experience with somebody who has a certain characteristic, and then our brains assume that everybody who has that characteristic, associate that characteristic with whatever we were feeling at that time. So if we had a negative feeling, then we would associate that characteristic with everybody, anybody who had that. And so our brains just kind of carry on this process of, friends, enemies, and strangers, and making, quick decisions like this. So how does that sound to you?
We're too hardwired. How does that work?
How, Craig? You were nodding while I was. Yeah.
Came up in our group. I find myself being ways I don't intend to in the world. Being ways I don't intend to in the world. I have my practice. Mm-hmm. And sometimes something will come up that just totally, for whatever reason I can't explain, takes me by surprise. I'm hijacked, I react. Mm-hmm. I find it's not an excuse that I have this tendency, mm-hmm. but I've found that it's an interesting thing for me to investigate the brain science. Mm-hmm. That says this thing called the amygdala flooding me with, I react, adrenaline is released, and something I related to that was said earlier was that I need to calm myself down.
Yeah.
And my Dharma practice helps me do that.
Mm-hmm. So it helps you to think that it's your amygdala that's kind of firing.
It helps explain, it keeps me from going to a place of blaming myself. Of cutting off, mm-hmm. cutting off insight by blaming myself, feeling ashamed, feeling guilty, saying, well, geez, you've been practicing Dharma for going on 20 years, and this is the best you can do, and that. Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so by having a physical component to you, it prevents you from blaming yourself. Yeah. Could there be another approach, another way of thinking that would prevent you from blaming yourself? I'm asking this because what you said is really, it's very much what Russell says. He really emphasizes, it's our brain that does this, and therefore it's not our fault, and we didn't choose to have these emotions. It's not our fault. And so when you said that, then it's like, oh, okay, this is the person that Russell's talking to.
Well, we do have a frontal lobe.
Yeah.
Also.
Uh-huh.
And the frontal lobe is that part, which is, people are believing, research is saying, is associated with higher thinking and compassion. And I have a feeling, I have a conviction, compassion just arises in me. There's times when I can't explain it. When I stop, that path, when I stop that trajectory of a reaction, and I'm able to go, just like me, mm-hmm. this person, this thing, this place wants to be happy. They don't really want to fight.
Mm-hmm. But when you switch, do you think, oh, that's coming from my brain?
I don't know where it's coming from.
Okay. Okay. Some other people. Yeah, you're in medical field, you know.
Well, I kind of have two tracks. One is kind of the Western science track, and I can spew that one off. But when I think about in a dharmic way, I think that, you know, I have these habitual patterns since beginningless time, and the thing that I'm trying to develop and uncover is my Buddha nature, and that through these practices I'll be able to really transform these habitual patterns that have been since beginningless time. And if I can think that way, that gets me out of a self-critical place.
Mhm.
You know, that, you know, it's hopeless, or, you know.
Okay, so you prevent the self-criticism by thinking, these have been tendencies in my mind since beginningless time, so it's going to take a while to overcome them, and I need to be patient and work hard. Yeah. How many of you find, you know, when you hear, you know, because nowadays science, the scientific perspective, you know, they're saying so much about the brain. How many of you feel that, like, learning about the brain really is helping you understand yourself, and or it helps you to get out of this thing of like not blaming yourself for things? Okay. Yeah, Tree?
Just being in the medical field, I've seen what hormones can do to people,
Mm.
and I'm not sure what came first, the chicken or the egg, but I've seen what hormones do to somebody. And whether your reaction from what your senses, so I work for mental health,
Mm-hmm.
things aren't always as they appear.
Mm-hmm.
So I've seen, you know, people's adrenaline or testosterone or there's tons of hormones forever coursing through your body.
Yeah, that really affect our mental states. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
I think one of the things that research is showing, and I found in my own practice, both my Dharma practice and my professional practice, is that we can train our brain or our mind, whatever it is that we're training, if we take a look at it and start working with it in kind of a methodical way. So I think that whereas we may have tendencies, those tendencies we're finding can be overcome in big ways.
Okay, so the whole idea of training, whether you're training your mind or your brain. Yes.
That's why we're all here, isn't it?
Yes. Yeah. Now I'm just trying to see kind of which perspective helps people in which ways. Yeah.
For me, the biological perspective is really limited,
Mm-hmm.
and I don't like it or avoid it,
Mm-hmm.
precisely because, you know, it's a ready excuse if we blame our behavior on the biochemical process.
Mhm.
We don't need to change it. Well, you know, I've got a chocolate cake gene. I just can't help myself. But, you know, now they're finding that there's a much larger story, that there's gene expression involved, and that there's all these chemicals that influence what genes are expressed. And even though we might have that chocolate cake gene,
Mm-hmm.
if something in the environment doesn't occur to cause that chocolate cake gene to be expressed, it's not a factor in our lives. It's complicated.
Yeah, it is quite complicated. Yeah.
Well, I think that it's a continuum, and so when a lot of people are talking about one side of the continuum, there's different ways to think about it, but when you're talking about, I'm a psychiatrist, and when you're talking about the seriously mentally ill, having it be about the brain is one of the ways that is rationalized for mentally ill, which are family members, help overcome stigma for those folks to get treatment.
Mhm.
And so I think when you're talking over there, then it makes a lot of sense. You're kind of in the middle, it's really helpful to have the whole Dharma perspective and the ways that people can overcome horrible things that have happened to them and be able to change how they think, change how they act in really immediate, real ways is an excellent perspective. So depending on where you are, the argument changes.
That's quite interesting, yeah. So to have the scientific argument is very helpful when there's stigma against somebody who's mentally ill, or maybe, like in his case, when you're blaming yourself for something, then that perspective is very helpful to get you out of that kind of blame or prejudice or whatever. But for somebody in another situation, talking about, let's say, karmic tendencies, or just even the psychological view of training and repetition could be a more useful perspective, because like what you said, you find that if you hear just the brain perspective or that one, then it feels kind of like you're trapped in some ways. Yeah. Yeah.
I was thinking, I watched a documentary about a group of blind Tibetans.
Mm-hmm.
They get incredibly, they go through a lot of abuse because in, I guess the cultural perspective in Tibet is that if you're blind, it means that you murdered someone in a past life. And so they get completely marginalized and spit on, and just like, it's really, really sad what happens to these people. And I think that if you kind of take that, like, I can't remember the point that I was trying to make.
Oh, okay.
But, sorry.
Yeah. I mean, it seems in a way what's coming out is that any system we use to describe something can be helpful or harmful depending upon how we use it. Yeah. And so then the question becomes, does using a system depend upon how true it is, or how helpful and harmful it can be? Or maybe a little bit of both. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
It seems to me that the harm comes when we hold any of it as absolute. And that's my own reaction to the physical,
Yeah.
the sort of materialist view. I mean, there's some interesting material there, but it's so often in our culture it's held as the ultimate view.
Mm-hmm.
And then it seems quite harmful and really is overbearing and wrong. But it's not really.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it depends upon how it's used and who it's used with and everything. Yeah, quite interesting. Yeah. I don't care which one of you. One first, the other one next.
You go first.
Oh, I was just thinking that to deny the scientific model can lead to a lot of difficulties also. Like the scientific model might not have absolute truth to it.
Mm-hmm.
To say that it's, to deny it, it's a thing to vigilance of the particular two, where it could be very beneficial
Mm-hmm.
in conjunction with Buddhist thinking. So doing this kind of thing, I don't want to look at it, I don't want to think about it, because it creates conflict in how I view the world.
Yeah.
It's really not so helpful.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
I like what he said right there about sometimes people use it as an excuse.
Mm-hmm.
And you couple that with what Shoni said about the absolutes, categorizing things. Because I don't like making excuses for when I behave badly. And I've done enough Dharma practice over the course of time that what used to cause negativity, like that reaction you just talked about years ago, the same set of circumstances, I can see the practice has changed my mind.
Mm-hmm.
But on the other hand, it is sometimes useful to hear how
chemical reactions and things can lead you to do certain things given the right circumstances.
Mm-hmm.
So I think if you have a big picture, you know, they build upon each other.
Yeah, yeah. They build upon each other. You can, get into a lot of sensitive legal issues, though, because then would it be a reasonable defense to say, well, somebody's brain chemistry was off and that's why they killed somebody? Yeah. What? Yeah. But when they say insanity, I don't know that they're necessarily talking about the brain. They're just talking about somebody being insane. It's, to say, okay, somebody's brain chemistry made them kill someone. So does that mean that person's not guilty? Or does that mean that society should round up everybody who has that brain chemistry and limit their activities? It can get quite interesting. I don't want to talk about this too long, but Lynn's been boiling here. Oh.
Just from a practice standpoint, I see a similarity because in the biological brain and the karmic emotion, they're both about survival. One is the fight-or-flight response that we physiologically have as we evolve, and karma comes from trying to have the I survive, that self-cherishing.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a lot of...
Yeah, they both models converge upon. Guess what? Of course, me and my survival and my happiness, and yeah, there's definitely a point of meeting there. Okay, last comment, and then we'll go on.
It just seemed to me, and I like all these theories, I love them all, the scientific model, the hormones, the early childhood, the people you had around you, your karma. None of these things you have any control over. There are things on you reveal, over time. So it seems to me like, yeah, these are all really interesting and probably all really, really valid, but we can't control them, and the only thing we can do is pick ourselves up one more time and try to do it better next time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's like saying, well, all these things have causes that are already in place. So in that sense of things being caused and causes being already in place, we don't have control. But we do have control in the sense of how we respond. Yeah, and so then it might be an issue of which model helps us respond in the best way at any particular time, or like you were saying, to any particular group. Because it's very interesting in editing these books. Every time our brain produces these emotions, and I'm going... My brain is not. Do I say my brain doesn't like this idea? Yeah. Okay, so let's start with a little bit of just silent meditation, and then we'll go into start talking about the four immeasurables and so. So you can, if you want to just you can do very short Chenrezig practices. All you do is remember your motivation, think of Chenrezig, imagine the light and nectar coming into you, and say the mantra. You don't need to go through long, detailed things to do that. Or if there's a particular point that's come up so far, then think about it, contemplate it, and especially see how you can use things to transform yourself. So we'll have about 10-15 minutes. Hey, within, both the Pali and the Sanskrit traditions of Buddhism, you find the four immeasurables. They're the verses that are in our sadhana. Sadhana means like the practice text. It's on page 2, the 4 immeasurables. In the Pali tradition, they're often called the 4 boundless ones, or the 4 Brahmaviharas, because they're the 4 divine abodes, because they are states of meditative absorption on love, compassion, joy, and equanimity. So we find them in the 4 immeasurables, and then we find these qualities also when we talk about the method for developing bodhicitta, except they can be in a different order then. And even in the 4 immeasurables, we find them in a different order. Here we start with love, compassion, joy, and equanimity is at the end. In the short version of the 4 immeasurables, we start with equanimity first, and then go to love, compassion, and joy. When we do the technique for generating bodhicitta, the altruistic intention, we start with equanimity, then we go to love and compassion, and joy is just kind of implied. So it's quite interesting to think about these qualities and how they relate to each other in different situations, why they are placed in one position or another in relationship to the others. So regarding the 4 immeasurables, there's different ways to meditate on them. One way is in terms of improving our relationships with others. And so here, the order is love, compassion, joy, and equanimity. The idea is that we try and make love or friendliness. Here love can mean like loving kindness, generally a receptive attitude towards others, a friendly, kind attitude towards others. We make that our basic MO regarding sentient beings. Okay? You're right, and it's the other way in the short one. Sorry, yeah. In this practice, equanimity's first, and in the short one, it's at the end. Okay. Regardless, when we're meditating in the 4 immeasurables to improve our relationships with other people, then loving kindness, friendliness becomes the attitude with which we first interact with people. Okay, so we try and make that friendly, open, kind attitude just our general way of reacting with others or interrelating with others. Then, when others have suffering, and out of suffering, maybe they do something that harms us, or maybe they don't do something that harms us, but they're just suffering physically, suffering mentally, due to the human condition, then compassion becomes the response that we want to cultivate. Compassion meaning the wish for them to be free of that suffering and misery. Then, when these same sentient beings have good things in their life, rather than be jealous of them or envious, we rejoice, and so that's the third of the 4 immeasurables, joy. So joy at others' success, joy at their good qualities, joy at their virtue. And then, if others are doing things that are harmful, we try and help them, but they aren't very receptive to the help, then we generate equanimity. Just realizing that we can't control the situation, they're operating due to, karmic forces and mental habits that we can't control. And so rather than get angry or judgmental towards them, we have equanimity. Okay, so do you see how those 4 kind of, that way of relating fits in the context of relating to other people? sometimes they talk about these four giving the example of how a parent relates to their child. So when the child is, born, and when they're just kind of living their life, then you relate to the child with love. You want them to be happy. When they're suffering, you relate with compassion, wanting them to be free of suffering. When they're successful in their endeavors and they achieve good things and they're growing up well and, kind of creating the causes for their own happiness, then you share in their happiness by having joy or rejoicing. And then when they're independent and on their own and they don't need you so much and it's an empty nest, then you have equanimity because you don't need to, help manage their affairs so much. So they often, give that analogy as a way of seeing them. When it comes to generating these, because when we talk about concentration or shamatha, serenity, then any of these four can be how we create the states of mind on which we develop serenity. So when you're developing serenity, then you would start meditating on love, continue but with compassion, go to joy, and then finally equanimity. Okay, and it's interesting here because the equanimity, in many cases, is kind of, in the Pali tradition, they explain as involving an understanding of karma. In other words, you realize that people experience results according to their own previous actions. So rather than get angry at them for how they're behaving or whatever they're going through, rather than getting partial towards them and attached to them because of their behavior or what they're going through, then you cultivate equanimity, understanding that they experience the results of causes they themselves have created. So I find that way of explaining equanimity can be very, very helpful for us. Most of us, we kind of can get love, compassion, and joy. Yeah, but when we think of equanimity, we think of being cold and aloof, which is not the meaning of equanimity. Or, that's one element. And another element is we tend to be control freaks. Yeah, and we want to control everybody. We want everybody to be different ways. It's what we were talking about earlier, how we have so much excellent advice to give the rest of the world, and they don't want it. Okay, so where does that tendency to give unwanted advice come from? Where does that tendency to get really upset at other people because they're doing exactly what you don't want them to do? Or getting really upset with people because they're doing something that even damages themselves. Forget about damaging you. They're doing very self-destructive behavior. We see it all the time, people with various addictions, the self-destructive, self-sabotaging behavior. So how come when we see somebody behaving in that way, we get so upset and so angry? Have you ever asked yourself that? And sometimes when we ask ourselves that, then we say, okay, I just have to stop caring about them. I just stop caring about them. They're out of my life. I don't care. Well, does that really make you stop caring about them? No. What it does is it replaces, attachment with anger. That's all you've done. You haven't stopped caring. You just replace the attachment with anger. Okay. So equanimity here is another approach to the whole thing, which I think is so helpful to us because we can't control so much of what goes on with other people. And we drive ourselves nuts trying to. And we drive ourselves nuts getting angry with them or worrying about them. Yeah? Parents worry, don't they? Isn't that one of the job descriptions of a parent? Yeah. And we confuse worry with love. We think if we don't worry about somebody, it means we don't love them. Yeah? I saw that once when my niece she must have been only about 3 or 4 years old. And she was dictating some things to me, and I was writing them to her, for her. And it was interesting in her way of thinking, I worry about you, and I love you, and I miss you. We're all synonymous. Yeah? And I think many people feel that if they don't miss somebody, it means they don't love them. If they aren't distraught with worry and fear over what's happening to that person, it means that you don't love them. Do you have those kind of assumptions somewhere? In your brain, maybe? Or in your mind somewhere? I'm not sure where it is, but do you have that kind of thing? That if I don't worry, I don't love them. Or if somebody isn't worried about me, it means they don't love me. If somebody doesn't miss me, it means they don't love me. My loved ones have to be pining away for me, the whole time I'm at retreat, missing me, longing for me to come home. And then that's how I know they love me. Is that what you're wanting? Or maybe you're missing them. Yeah, we've had people leave retreat because they've missed their family. Yeah? Oh, I miss them so much. Yeah? Or you worry about them. They can't, I'm so worried. They need me there. They need me, not somebody else. They can't function with other people. They need me. Right? Yeah? This person needs me, therefore I have value. Things get a bit sticky, don't they? This whole way of thinking. Yeah? When we think that worrying is an indication of love, yeah, what results does that bring to ourself and to the other person? Well, to ourself, it means that we're miserable with worry when we aren't near the other person and able to control what they're doing. So worry creates a lot of misery in the name of love. Okay? Being the child of a worrying mother, okay, I'm Jewish, there's no choice. Well, I used to be. I'm overcoming. My Jewish gene is not functioning very well these days. I'm developing too much equanimity to... But, being the child of a mother that worried. How many of you were children of mothers that worried? Oh, yes, you know what it's like. It's awful, isn't it? It's totally awful. It's like you don't feel like their worrying is an indication of their love. You feel like their worrying is an indication of their trying to control you. But when you worry about your kids, or other relatives, then you feel that your worry is an indication of your love and affection for them, right? Okay, so this just shows how screwy we think. You know, our way of thinking is pretty nuts sometimes. Yeah. So, you know, there's some disadvantages to thinking that worry is indicative of love, for yourself and for the other person. Yeah. What about missing somebody? Where does that leave you if missing somebody is synonymous with love? And if you don't miss them, you don't love them. Yeah? It leaves you completely dissatisfied because it's impossible for you to always be with those people. So that means when you're not with them, you're saying to yourself, I can't be truly happy because I'm not with that person. I can only be truly happy when I'm with, you know, these particular number of people, you know, usually 5 or under, depending how many kids you have, you know. But I can only be happy when I'm with these people. When I'm with the other 7 billion human beings on this planet, I can't be happy because I miss these 5, or I miss these 10, or I miss these 2, or 1. Okay? So equating missing somebody with loving them sets ourselves up for a lot of dissatisfaction, and it makes it very difficult for us to connect with the other 7 billion human beings, because we're telling ourselves that we can't. We have to really stay here and miss the other person. Strange, isn't it, how we think? In some cultures, if you don't go hysterical when somebody dies, it means you didn't love them. If you're not completely overwhelmed by grief and screaming and shrieking and beating your chest and throwing yourself on their grave, it means you didn't love them. Yeah, that kind of notion boxes us in too, doesn't it? Yeah, it creates the cause for a lot of guilt when we are not overwhelmed by grief, when we just accept the natural occurrence of things. Then we think, uh-oh, I'm doing something wrong. You know, such a bad person I am, I'm not hysterical. I really should be hysterical. Yeah. This was in my family too. Yeah. So, you know, these notions that we have about what love means and how we should feel if we really love somebody, these ideas really affect our lives. And they actually, I think, impinge upon our ability to have genuine love for others. Okay. From a Buddhist perspective, love simply means you want somebody to have happiness and the causes of happiness. That's all. Doesn't mean you have to worry about them. It doesn't mean you have to miss them. It doesn't mean you have to control them because they're creating negative karma. It doesn't mean you need to judge them because they're, you know, doing some self-sabotaging behavior. It just means that you wish them to have happiness and its causes. And that kind of love is, in a Buddhist sense, is based on equanimity. And so here, in this rendition of the 4 immeasurables, as well as when we do the meditation to develop altruism, equanimity comes first, not last. Because to really generate the wish for somebody to have happiness and its causes, we need to be free of attachment and anger towards them. Because if we aren't free of attachment and anger, then we're going to get involved in being anxious for them, worrying about them, missing them, trying to control them, possessing them. Yeah, all those other ways we have of, painfully relating to other beings when our minds are full of distorted conceptions. That happens largely based on a lack of equanimity, meaning that attachment, anger, and confusion are ruling our minds. But in some ways we fear equanimity because, like I said, we think equanimity means that we're just detached, we're apathetic, when that's not the meaning of equanimity. Or we judge ourselves thinking we don't care, or whatever. But actually, equanimity is a way of relating to others in a very balanced, open, accepting way. And I think some equanimity towards ourselves wouldn't be a bad idea either. Yeah, relating to ourselves in an open, balanced, non-judgmental way. Yeah, because we're often so quick to judge ourselves. And this tendency towards self-judgment also makes genuine love really difficult. We can't really love ourselves when we're constantly full of this negative self-talk. And we can't, when we have a hard time caring for ourselves, when we're the dearest one to ourselves, then it's going to be very hard to care for others, yeah, with as much concern as we care for the self. Because the self is our major object of concern, isn't it? I'm just talking normal human beings. What we were saying, whether it's your brain or your mind, it comes back to me, doesn't it? Yeah. Okay, so what does equanimity mean then? How do we cultivate a sense of equanimity? So I think equanimity is a sense of equal open-heartedness towards everybody. It's a mind free of clinging attachment that overestimates somebody's good qualities. It's a mind free from all the negative projections or exaggerated defects we put on other people. And it's also free of apathy, the ostrich mind that wants to stick our head in the sand and say, it's all too much, I just don't care. Okay? So equanimity is a way of remaining open without getting bent out of shape. Without, getting out of whack. Okay? So, yeah, how do we generate that feeling of equal, open-hearted concern that's free of attachment, anger, and apathy? Well, one way that they teach in the scriptures is to realize how these categories are very changeable. Yeah. And if we look in our lives, one day somebody gives us $1,000, so they're our friend. The next day they criticize us, they become our enemy. After that, we lose touch with them, they become the stranger. As a friend, we're attached to them. As an enemy, we have hostility towards them. As a stranger, we're apathetic towards them. Okay? And so these categories of friends, enemies, and strangers can change very, very quickly. Yeah. If you're married, you know that, don't you? Yeah. Somebody is your best friend one day, and the next day you're so mad at them. So even though there may be affection somewhere in the long term mixed in, at that very moment they've switched from the friend category to the enemy category. And at that moment you hate them more than Osama bin Laden, don't you? Yeah. They feel much more threatening than Osama bin Laden. Yeah. Or whoever is your latest object of fear. I don't know. Yeah. Used to be George Bush. So, yeah, is it Paul Ryan now? Is it Karl Rove? Yeah. Is it? Again. Yeah. But we generate so much fear towards others. I don't want to insinuate that everybody has to be anti-Republican here. Just most of you. No, I'm joking. I'm joking. Yeah. No, I just, yeah. Somebody many years ago came up to me and she said, I really love these meditations on compassion, but I have so much problem having compassion for Republicans. I mean, she was really suffering, how do I have compassion for Republicans? And then other people come, and how do I have compassion for Democrats? Yeah. And then some, Yeah, equanimity is the answer for all of these, isn't it? Okay. Yeah, so whoever we're projecting our stuff on. Okay, so seeing how these relationships are very, very changeable, that can help us make them less solid in our minds. Yeah, they're changing, they're fleeting. And especially if you consider multiple lifetimes, then, somebody might be your best friend in one lifetime and your worst enemy in another. They say that we've all been each other's mothers, yeah, and that we've been in every relationship possible with each other in previous lives. So given that, how can we say that somebody is a true friend or a true enemy or a true stranger? Yeah, because the relationships change in this life, they definitely change over many, many lifetimes. I had one friend who he loved the Dharma, and then he fell in love with another woman who loved the Dharma. And then he started telling me that they were soulmates. And I was going, wait a minute, that is not a Buddhist concept. There is no concept of having a permanent soul, life after life after life. Yeah, it's quite interesting what attachment can do to your mind. When you're attached to somebody, you develop all sorts of wrong conceptions. Okay, so the changeability of the relationships is one way. There's another way that I like to think of it that I found very, very effective. So let me lead you in a little meditation for a few minutes. Okay, some of you have done this before, but it's always very helpful to do this again. Yeah? So knowing that we tend to have attachment for friends, aversion for enemies, apathy for strangers. And here, relatives that you're attached to, they go in the friend category. And people who you're mad at go in the enemy category, even if you're not always mad at them. You know, you just happen to be mad at them right now. Okay. So think of somebody that you have a lot of attachment for. You know, somebody who's a very close friend. Okay, when you have a specific individual in mind, then ask yourself, why am I attached to that person? What is it that brings forth my attachment to them? My wanting not to be separate from them, my wanting to always be close to them. Then think of somebody who's an enemy, where there's a lot of hostility or animosity towards that person. And ask yourself, why do I feel that hostility and animosity? Why is that person my quote-quote enemy? And then think of a stranger, somebody towards whom you feel kind of indifferent or apathetic, and ask yourself, why do I feel indifferent or apathetic towards that person? So are you attached to some people? Why? 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 What did your mind say in response to the... They like me, they love me, what else? They what? They laugh at my jokes. Yes.
They do for me, how available they are.
Mm-hmm. Okay, what else?
They put my needs above their own.
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm.
The one where pride, pride, because the person is popular and they're talking to me and stuff.
Oh, yeah. You know, they're a popular person, they're well respected, and they think I'm good. Yeah, yeah. Okay, they'll save me or protect me. Mm-hmm.
They have really great qualities, like exaggerating their qualities.
Yeah, they have very great qualities that happen to be the qualities we appreciate. Yeah. Okay. And then the people that you have hostility and animosity towards, why? They hurt me. They don't do what I want them to do. They hurt my friend.
They deny the qualities I appreciate.
They deny the qualities I appreciate. Yeah.
Obnoxious drunken.
They're
Not obnoxious drunken.
they're doing things that I disapprove of.
My expectation
Yeah.
of conduct.
Okay.
Criticize me.
Oh yeah, that's the number one, isn't it? They criticize me. Okay. And then what about the people you feel apathetic towards? Why?
First of all, they're really hard to think of these people, because you tend to dismiss them. And so I had a hard time, it's the hardest one to find. So I had to find, okay, check out the lady in the Staples store. She doesn't give me things I need. She doesn't deny me the things I want.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah. So the checkout lady doesn't give me what I want. She doesn't deny me what I need. I have no interaction with them. What else? Yeah.
Well, I was thinking about the stranger, and because I ride the bus all the time, I was thinking, well, a lot of those people are strangers, but as soon as one sits down next to me, chewing gum loud and smelling bad, then they become kind of this enemy.
Right.
They walk by me and I don't see them, I just kind of out of the corner of my eye. Then they're a stranger, but as soon as there's some kind of interaction, they smile at me, hi, how are you today? You know, I don't really know them, but I have a pleasant feeling. So there's all these degrees of...
Yeah. Yeah, you really see that to be a true stranger, they really have to not have very much relation to us. And they have to not either please us or offend us. Yeah, but as soon as they please us or offend us, then they go to some extent into either the friend category or the enemy category, don't they? Okay, so what word do you hear in this discussion? Me. Oh, yeah. Yeah, it's all about how people relate to me.
Their ability to be impartial.
Yeah. Yeah, we can't be impartial because everybody is screened. You know, we are doing screening for the categories of friend, enemy, and stranger all the time. And depending upon how somebody relates to us, you know, even some small thing, you know, like walk by and smell bad, toss you in the enemy category. Walk by and smell good, put them in the friend category. Yeah? Show me where my toothpaste is. Oh, they go in the friend category. Yeah? They're too busy with another customer, they go in the enemy category. Yeah? Quite interesting, isn't it? That how they relate to me is the basis upon which I differentiate friend, enemy, and stranger. However, when we look at friends, enemies, and strangers, we don't think of them as going in those categories because of how we've discriminated them. We think of them being in those categories because they are a certain type of person from their own side, independent of what we think and independent of how they relate to us. You know, this person is, you know, they're crooked, they're bad, they're this and they're that, you know, from their own side. It's not that they've shown that side of their personality to me. It's that they're that way from their own side. Somebody else is equally wonderful and, you know, fantastic from their own side. You know, that's how we perceive it. We don't perceive it as if we have any control or any ability or any involvement in people becoming our friends, enemies, and strangers. Because good people, I mean, friends are synonymous with good people. Enemies are synonymous with bad people, and strangers are synonymous with neutral people. Okay? So they're good from their own side, but in fact, we're labeling them good because of how they relate to us. And we're labeling somebody else as bad because of how they relate to us. And the same as neutral. Yeah. So when we meet some people, when we first meet them, we get along so well. And then they may tell us about all the people that they're angry at, and we really we're understanding, and we, support them, and we tell them about all the people we're angry at, and they understand us, and they support us, and, and validate why we're angry at somebody. Okay? So we see each other as good people. But as soon as that person, instead of showing their angry side to somebody else, shows their angry side to me, toss them in the enemy basket. Yeah? If they show their anger to somebody else, especially somebody who I don't like, then you're really a friend. Yeah, if you hate the same people I hate, we're real good friends. But as soon as that quality of anger that person has, instead of getting shown to that person, gets shown to me, then, they go from being a good person completely into being a bad person. Don't they? Yeah? And when somebody who was our enemy before, who treated us rudely and, they were mean or rude or whatever, we find that we meet them in a different situation and we get to know them. And then, instead of showing their rude qualities towards us, they're showing their nice qualities towards us. Then, same person with the same qualities goes in the friend category worthy of being attached to. And with both the friend and the enemy, when we lose touch with them, or before we even knew them, excuse me, they were in the stranger category, the I don't care about you category. Very interesting, isn't it? And we think we are rational human beings. Are we rational human beings? Yeah? We're completely biased, aren't we? Based on the notion that I am the most important one in the universe. And how people relate to me determines whether they are a good person or a bad person. And whether they're good or whether they're bad is their inherent quality. And therefore, because it's their inherent quality, everybody should see them the same way I do. So when somebody says nice things about somebody we don't like, do you feel your temperature go up? Do you feel your muscles get tight? Do you feel a little bit of anger or jealousy come in? Yeah. Remember a time when somebody praised somebody you didn't like? Ooh, that's awful, isn't it? Like, oh, how can you say something nice about that person? Ugh. Yeah? But it's simply because they're, not sharing our particular opinion. And we think that because that person is objectively bad, then everybody should dislike them. And this other person is objectively good. Can't you see this one politician is completely good? Everybody should vote for them. Yeah. So we get ourselves in a lot of big messes because of this biased mind, don't we? Yeah? We get ourselves in a lot of messy situations and also messy states of mind. Because when we're attached to others, our mind is not peaceful. We're clinging on to them, we're afraid of losing them, we want to be with them, we miss them, we're worried about them disapproving of us. Yeah? And similarly, when we're angry at somebody, we all know we're miserable then. Yeah? What are they going to do to me? Well, how am I going to prevent this from happening? And then when somebody's in the neutral category, we just shut down and they become, as human as this. We don't even think of them as having feelings. Yeah? So there's some real problems with having attachment, aversion, and apathy. Yeah, you can see why equanimity would just really level things out. Okay, so in your meditation this evening, during some of the silent times, try and go through this little exercise again, and also imagine what it would be to feel equanimity towards some of the people that you're attached to, and some that you have aversion to, and some that you just dismiss altogether. What would it feel like to have equal open-hearted concerns towards these people? Just kind of try it on and imagine what it would feel like. Yeah. Imagine kind of shutting down the whole system that you use to categorize people. Yeah, just shut it down for a while and think, when you think of anybody, think there's somebody who wants happiness and doesn't want to suffer. And they're all equal in that way. Okay, so do some meditation on this evening and tomorrow morning. Okay? So we'll dedicate.